بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين أما بعد إخوة الإسلام عباد الله. Quite often I'm asked about studying overseas, people asking questions about studying overseas and attempting to give practical suggestions and or advice. As a result of frequent questions of this nature in this regard, and I just wanted to present some practical suggestions to people in general as it relates to this particular subject matter, with hopes that it is a means of some people benefiting in their quest to seek knowledge. Now we know, as it relates to seeking knowledge, the seeking of knowledge, and the possessors of knowledge in Islam have a great status. They have a great status. And this is seen throughout the text of the Quran and the Sunnah. If I were to just present some of those evidences to illustrate that, then we will find that the evidences in this regard are in abundance. There are some that come to mind at the moment. One, the narration of Abu Huraira radhiyallahu ta'ala alayhi, with the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam, he stated, "Ala inna hadhihi ad-dunya mal'unatun, mal'unun ma fiha illa dhikrullah, wa ma walahu wa alimun aw muta'allimun." The Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam stated, indeed this dunya, this worldly life, it's cursed. It is cursed, and that which is therein is cursed, except the remembrance of Allah. وَمَا وَالَاهُ Al-Imam Nawawi, he stated what's intended by that, yani ta'atullah, yani the obedience of Allah. And then the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam stated after that, and the alim, the scholar or the possessor of knowledge, and the one that is seeking knowledge. Alimun aw muta'allimun, the one who's going out to seek knowledge, clarity, and understanding. We have another narration that is likewise upon the authority of Abu Huraira, where the Prophet ﷺ stated, "Man ja'a masjidi hadha lam ya'tihi illa li khairin يتعلمه أو يعلمه فهو بمنزلة المجاهد في سبيل الله." He states that whoever comes to this masjid of mine and he does not come except to obtain good, yani to learn it or to teach it, then he is on the level of the mujahid that is out on the path of Allah tabaraka wa ta'ala, to the end of the narration. And then we have another narration that is upon the authority of Abdullah ibn Mas'ud radiyallahu anhu, with the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he stated, "La hasada illa fithnatayn." There is no envy except in two types of individuals. يعني رجل أتاه الله مالا فسلطه على هلكته في الحق. A man whom Allah has given wealth and he disseminates that wealth or gives away that wealth or distributes that wealth in accordance with truth. وَرَجُلٌ أَتَاهُ اللَّهُ حِكْمَةً. A man whom Allah gives wisdom to. فَيَقْضِي بِهَا وَيُعَلِّمُهَا. And he judges in accordance with it, and he teaches it. And what is intended by wisdom here is al-ilm al-nafi', yani al-ilm al-shar'i. So these particular narrations, and there are many more, again, the evidence as it relates to this particular subject matter are in abundance. They're in abundance. Uh, this they all illustrate what I stated earlier as it relates to the virtues of knowledge, the virtues of the possessors of knowledge, and the virtues of the seeker of knowledge. So with that said and done, then I think from the most practical suggestions and or advice that I could give to a brother who is desiring the seeking of knowledge, and what I mean by that, leaving behind his family, or leaving his place of birth, his place of residence and or birth, regardless of visa in America or somewhere else, and going overseas to a land that's foreign to him to sit in the circles of knowledge. This is what I mean when I say, giving practical advice and or suggestions to those who are going to seek knowledge. And I think that the first bit of advice that I would give is that if you're truly striving to acquire knowledge, and you're sincere and you're genuine in the claim that you're making of wanting to seek knowledge, then my advice would be to start doing it right where you're at. If you're in America and you want to go overseas, to start ensure that you're benefiting yourself right now. Because for me, the brothers that I know personally, that I saw benefit tremendously while overseas, were people who had this enthusiasm to learn and to understand before they went overseas. So if you're in a situation and or circumstance where you have a beneficial caller and or teacher in your locality that's teaching your community, then start today. Start seeking knowledge and being diligent in seeking knowledge today. And this will benefit the student from more than one perspective. One, it benefits the student in actually becoming introduced to certain concepts within the religion. He becomes introduced to varying aspects of the creed and various aspects of the of acts of worship. He may become exposed to certain principles and thus forth and so on. And each time he's exposed to these things, he's increasing in knowledge. That's one thing. Also, it helps the person develop the method in seeking knowledge. It helps him develop how to properly study Islamic knowledge. And there's one thing that for anyone that wants to go out and seek knowledge of Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala's deen, one thing that he has to understand is that one, he's going to have to be a memorizer. If a person has a distaste for memorization, then he may not be cut out to seek knowledge, because you're going to have to memorize texts. You're going to have to memorize definitions to certain terminologies, and thus forth and so on. Islam is not, when it comes to Islam, memorization or seeking knowledge of Islam, memorization plays a big role in one's seeking knowledge. Likewise, If from the beneficial study habits that a person develops, if he starts seeking knowledge immediately, wherever he may be, is that you may, if you, especially if you're in a community where there is a student of knowledge that is studied overseas, then you can approach that student of knowledge in order to ascertain how to properly take notes, in the class, and how to properly review those notes and or arrange your notes in a way that makes it more beneficial for you to review the subject matter. All of this is very important. And a lot of times, brothers go overseas and they don't have these study habits. They don't have them. And so when they go overseas, they're struggling trying to figure out these things. They're studying, trying to figure out how to, properly take notes and properly arrange their notes in order to do proper review. They're struggling with these things. And these are things that the person can acquire some type of understanding of right now while you're wherever you're at, especially if you have a qualified teacher in your locality. So if a person is truly genuine as it relates to seeking knowledge, then let him start seeking knowledge right now. Or else a person may end up being like many people I've saw overseas who were literally just there on vacation. They were there on vacation. To a lot of people, seeking knowledge is somewhat glamorous, for lack of better expressions, and people don't understand the diligence and the major efforts that one is going to have to put in order to benefit from seeking knowledge. So the reality is, start right where you're at right now. Develop reading habits, develop memorization, and thus forth and so on. And if you're in a community where a qualified teacher is teaching, then seek assistance from that individual as it relates to beneficial study habits that you need to adopt that will be a benefit for you when you go overseas. So those are things that can be done by a person prior to traveling overseas. Another practical advice that a person may want to enact when going overseas is that whatever country you decide to go to, make sure that you're getting valuable information from people that are right there on the ground right now. Not people that were there at one time and have left and they may not have been there in a particular locality for a year or 2 years and thus forth and so on. Now, why do I say that? I say that because depending on where you may be going, the circumstances and conditions of the place may be changing as it relates to laws, as it relates to cost of living. And other than that, that can directly affect you and directly affect your well-being while you're overseas. So you want to make sure that whatever information you're getting as it pertains to a particular country, regardless if it's Egypt or Algeria or Saudi Arabia or the United Arab Emirates or wherever you may plan to go to seek knowledge, what we know from what we know of scholars from Ahl Sunnah being present, therein, do you want to make sure you're getting the correct information concerning those localities and what's taking place on the ground from what I mentioned previously. So that to me is very valuable advice in that regard. Another thing that I would say as it relates to this matter is that I find that there are a lot of people that have a fascination with studying in Saudi specifically, and that fascination for wanting to be in Saudi is crystal clear as to why. It's crystal clear. It doesn't need any type of explanation. It's crystal clear. But the point is that, that it may be that Allah may not want for you to be there. It may be that Allah may not want for you to be there. A lot of brothers want to study in one of the Islamic universities there, and with the hopes of acquiring, at the very least, a bachelor's degree, and with the possibility of maybe getting a master's and a PhD and thus forth and so on. But sometimes what you want may not necessarily be what Allah wants for you. However, you have to be genuine in your want as it relates to seeking knowledge. Now, I use myself as an example. I went to Egypt. I was in Egypt for 6 months, and then I made Umrah from Egypt to Saudi Arabia. And I ended up staying in Saudi Arabia for a year. And I fell in love with the place. And during that time, I was diligently trying to be enrolled in one of the Islamic universities there in Saudi Arabia. So much so that I even took a trip to a Sheikh Saleh Ali Sheikh to seek help and assistance from him in that regard. And this was at a time when he was the minister for Islamic for the Islamic affairs, a minister of Islamic affairs for the entire country, yani the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. So I went to him for help, and multiple other people, multiple people for help. Some people in positions of power there, and all the effort that I put in, Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala did not decree for me to be accepted into one of the universities in Saudi Arabia. So I returned back to the States. I ended up returning back to the States, remained in the States 3 more years before going back to Egypt again, and remaining in Egypt for a year, then going to Yemen and staying in Yemen for the time period that I stayed in Yemen. The point I'm making is that I understand that a lot of people want to be in Saudi Arabia as it relates to studying. And I'm not this is not an attempt to discourage anybody from studying in Saudi Arabia or trying to get accepted to one of the universities in Saudi Arabia. That's not what this is. It's not a discouragement from doing that. What I'm basically saying is keep all your options open. If you're truly genuine and sincere with seeking knowledge in order to better yourself, then you're going to seek knowledge regardless if you get accepted to a university in Saudi Arabia or not. Why? Because ultimately your goal is to better yourself and or improve yourself by gaining clarity of Allah wa Ta'ala's religion. And in my experience, after I came back from Saudi Arabia, there were multiple people, some brothers who got filtered out of the University of Medina. They weren't actually kicked out, but it was some type of technicality where they took a delay of studies and they were being prevented from coming back. It was some type of technicality. It was so long ago, I don't remember. But I remember it was a large group of students like that. and just students in general who hadn't studied there that kept applying and applying and applying. And they seemed like they put all their hopes in either returning back to Saudi for those who were there previously or going to Saudi for those who were applying. They were putting all their eggs in that one basket, and literally to this day, for the ones that I know of, none of them have been back overseas. None of them have either been back overseas, or for the ones that were just trying to get overseas for the first time, never even made it overseas. Never even made it overseas. So the point that I'm making, if you're being genuine and sincere in your claim to wanting to seek knowledge, then don't put all your eggs in one basket. In one basket, there are multiple scholars and or people of knowledge in multiple countries. We got scholars in Algeria. We have scholars and people of knowledge in Egypt. There are people of knowledge in UAE. There are some people of knowledge in Bahrain, and thus forth and so on. People of knowledge in Mauritania. When I say people of knowledge, upon al-minhaj as-salafi. Upon al-minhaj as-salafi. So, you want to keep all options open because the goal is seeking knowledge, not being in Saudi Arabia just chilling and feet kicked up in Saudi Arabia. So that would be something that I would advise the brothers to be mindful of. Something else that I would advise the brothers to be mindful of is the fact that because what you're trying to achieve is something noble and something is tremendous. The goal is tremendous. And so you will be tested. You will be tested from the varying tests that Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala bestows upon His servants. You may be tested with a loss of wealth. You may be tested with, as it relates to your health, becoming sick, and thus forth and so on. When I went to Egypt, I was tested repeatedly as it relates to my health. I remember one time I had the flu, and I was still going to classes with a full-fledged flu. You have to keep in mind, I was in my early 20s. I'm in my early 40s now, and I'm 41. I would never seem like if I get the flu now, and I feel like I'm devastated. But when I was younger, I seem to have more of a resistance to it. But for those who've been in Egypt, they know the distance between the 2 points I'm about to say. But I was in an area called Ain Shams. And I remember riding the bus from Ain Shams all the way to Medina to Nasr in not Hayya Thamin, Hayya Sabia, if I'm not mistaken. I had an Arabic tutor, a one-on-one tutor. I would ride way from Ain Shams to Medina to Nasr to sit with him for, I think it was a 2-hour or an hour and a half class, and then go and ride that bus back from Medina to Nasr all the way back to Ain Shams. And one time I did that with the flu, and realizing by the time I was on my way back to Ain Shams that, wow, I have a flu. And when I woke up in the morning, the flu was so light that I didn't realize that I had the flu. But by the time I was already in Medina to Nasr, I realized I had a flu because it had intensified. And then there were, you may have other cases. I remember one time when I was in Yemen. When I was in Yemen, I was sick multiple times, especially when I was in Damaj. One time I had some type of lung infection. Another time, I repeatedly had diarrhea. You will eat something with the brothers, and then next thing you know, you have episodes of diarrhea, and that happened often. And even the sickness that caused me to leave Damaj I acquired an eye virus. I had some sort of eye virus while I was in Damaj, so much so that some of the last durus that I took while in Damaj, I couldn't even look the teacher in the eye because when I stepped out of the home, the sun, the light from the sun, it made the virus. My eye was very sensitive to the light, so much so that I would walk the pathway towards the masjid, literally looking down on the ground, literally looking down on the ground. I remember I was taking a class with Sheikh Ali al-Razihi from a book that he authored. And I only was able to get past the first chapter before I realized I need to seek medical help for my eye condition. Because to be quite honest, at that time, I literally thought I was going blind in that eye. And alhamdulillah, I didn't go blind, walillah alhamd. But at that time, that's what I thought. And so the point that I'm making is, when you're overseas, you'll be tested in varying ways. So you have to have patience with you when seeking knowledge. And to be honest, other students that you're around could be a source of annoyance for you. There were a lot of know-it-all brothers who were seeking knowledge, know-it-all brothers in the sense of making things harder on people due to them thinking they knew an issue that they really didn't know. You have brothers bickering over fiqh issues, which issue is correct, which issue is not correct. You have people bickering over, over all type of stuff. I remember I witnessed one time while I was in Damaj, there was a brother that wanted to leave Damaj and go to Ma'abar, where Sheikh Muhammad al-Imam was, because he wanted to focus on memorizing the Quran. And it was well known that at Sheikh Muhammad al-Imam's camp, there was a very strong program for memorizing the Quran. And I witnessed a group of brothers approach this brother, go to Matbar for what? There's nothing down there. What are you going to go? Why are you going to leave here? You're going to leave Damaj? You go, everything that's in Matbar is right here in Damaj, and blah, 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 blah. All this narrow-minded type of stuff to the point or the degree where it almost seemed like they were going to be hostile towards him if he stood by him standing his ground and saying, look, I understand what you guys are saying, but for me, I need to improve myself this way, and that environment is better for me than this environment. Oh, he's not being patient. Oh, he just doesn't like this environment, and thus forth and so on. So you're going to be tested by other students around you, narrow-minded know-it-alls who really should just be quiet a lot of times and focus on their studies. You will be tested with people like that. And so the point that I'm making is, when you actually go overseas, you want to go overseas knowing that you're going to have to be patient with some things that are connected to seeking knowledge that may be considered to be negative. Also, when going overseas to seek knowledge, then you want to have the mindset that without a doubt you want to memorize and you want to learn what is obligatory upon you to know. Those things are a given. But it's like something Sheikh Farid Abdullah told me. And see, I was blessed to come from a community in Los Angeles where we had a qualified teacher who had studied overseas teaching us. And because the community was a smaller community, Farid was able to, he was familiar with everybody basically that was in his community that came on a regular basis. And the people that attended his classes, he was somewhat familiar with their strengths and their weaknesses as it relates to knowledge. And so, Farid, when I was going overseas the second time, Farid approached me and he gave me some very valuable advice because he had saw that I was memorizing a hadith and like this, and yeah, and other things. And he told me that it is imperative for me to start to learn the basics of some of the Islamic sciences. He said, because until I go about in learning the basics in these Islamic sciences, that's all I'll be, is just someone who memorizes. And so he gave me a list of 3 books to get. One as it pertains to the basics of usul fiqh, another one as it pertains to the basics of ulum tafsir, and another one as it pertains to the basics of mustalah al-hadith. So he gave me a list of 3 books to get in those subjects. And walillah alhamd, I went to the bookstore in America and I acquired those, in Orange County, and I acquired those books. And walillah alhamd, 2 out of 3 of those books, I actually studied from beginning to end and studied other books as relates to those subject matters when I went overseas, based off the advice of Sheikh Farid, based off his advice. And I'm gonna be honest with you, after studying, I'll give an example. One of the books was Al-Usul min Ilm al-Usul. This is a book of Usul fiqh, the Usul of the Hanabila. And after I studied that book, it's hard to explain in a sense. I understood what Farid was telling me before I went overseas and studied that particular subject. I understood what he was saying. But it was like after I studied the book, my comprehension of what he said, it seemed like it expanded. And I don't know if that sounds strange to those that are listening or not, but it's like it expanded because I just had a different perspective on things as it relates to varying aspects of fiqh that I may have been studying. And in fact, to be honest, there were subject matters that Farid taught us in fiqh, and he taught us, with the evidence and the aqwal of the ulama, and that's for so on. And as usual, the teacher is going to teach you what he sees to be the more preponderant position, especially as it relates to matters of ikhtilaf. So there were some subject matters that when I went overseas, I had a particular understanding of certain subject matters, but after I studied usul fiqh and re-examined some of those subject matters, I found myself changing my position on some of those subject matters because now I was applying those principles that I learned in usul fiqh in order to deduce the proper ruling. So I think I kind of lost my train of thought for a second. But so those are things that I would just suggest that for the person that's hoping to go overseas, that he keeps in mind. Uh, I don't know if there's something else that I want to add to that. At the moment, I can't think of anything else at the moment that I would like to add to that. But hopefully, that which was presented um, will be of benefit for the person that would like to go overseas, inshallah. And Allah knows best. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك